You're listening to Tehachapod with Keybudge, Corey Costello, and Greg Garrett.
Tehachapod time again. Keybudge, Corey Costello today. Corey, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Good. Hey, today we're going to have a special guest, Mr. J.P. Lake. He was a speaker recently at our Greater Tehachapi Economic Development Council. Mm-hmm. And this is someone that you know and you've had several conversations with over the past, but this was something that I found interesting. I don't necessarily stay focused like you do on economic development and the things that go on in the business world, but the things that JP had to share at this EDC here in March were really, for me, I was like, wow, the things that they want to do with B3K Prosperity is big news for Kern County.
Yeah, there's a lot of aspects to economic development. I mean, a lot of it is just, yes, there is working with the business owner. There's the recruitment. There's the retention. There's the, hey, go out. I want a McDonald's in my community, so go talk to them, that kind of thing. Working with real estate. There's that piece. But there's also those other little intangibles in the background you have to consider. Your job sectors, your job growth. Where are those people going to live when you grow those job sectors? What are you providing in terms of job opportunities here? I think we're fortunate now in Tehachapi to have been over the last 30 years, because it certainly changed during my time here. That we went from a town that was really focused mostly on, when you grew up here, you either pretty much went to work at the cement plant, or you went to work at the prison, or you were in construction trade. Now we're surrounded by industries and very, very high-paying opportunities, and this B3K is part of that, and they're looking at expanding those initiatives.
Yeah, for me, part of what JP talked about, and I think hopefully we'll touch on today, were all the job creation hopes and plans for this initiative, and I think that was exciting. And then to look and focus on different sectors. Yeah. We've got such a wide diverse business portfolio here in Kern County, and to do the things that we do, and then here in Tehachapi, we have people involved in all of those industries.
Yeah, that's the beauty of Tehachapi. It always has been. I mean, even going back to when we found old documents relating to the Great Depression and talking about how Tehachapi did very well through the Great Depression because we weren't tied to one single industry, and that happens in recessions, and it happens in all kinds of economic times. And so now we still have those industries, those great industries like, the mining, manufacturing, with the cement and the mining there, and then U.S. borax, and then, the corrections and law enforcement aspect. We still have the construction. We have exciting stuff happening out in the desert too when it comes time to the aerospace, and we play a major support role in those industries. So we're very fortunate in Tehachapi to kind of touch every one of those, and even down to the San Joaquin Valley too with those industries as well.
Well, I think it's time to bring in our special guest today, Mr. John Paul, J.P. Lake. Welcome to Tehachapod.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Really enjoyed your presentation at our Greater Tehachapi Economic Development Council recently, and it perked up my ears, and that's hard to do.
Wow. Well, thank you.
And so let's talk about B3K Prosperity. What is it?
Yeah.
And why should people be aware of what you are doing?
Sure. So let's define the acronym first.
That's right.
B3K, the three Bs are Better, Bakersfield, Boundless, Kern. And you'll notice that kind of ties in a little bit to some of the rebranding that the county and the city of Bakersfield did a few years ago. And so that's where the name was sort of inspired by. This effort came together, or the idea for it started forming probably back in 2019. And there were a group of leaders in the community that went up to see the governor. And basically the message went something like this. They said, Kern County is being threatened by a lot of the policies that are coming down from the state. You're attacking our water, which hurts our farming community. You're attacking energy. And those are our two biggest property tax payers here in Kern County. So, either stop sending down these policies, or you need to figure out how you can help us maybe create new jobs in other areas so we can diversify the economy. And so the governor's office came through with a little bit of funding, and that allowed us to hire a firm called Brookings Institute out of Washington, D.C., and we got started with what became B3K, which is a regional plan for economic prosperity. And the goal over a 10-year period is to try to create 100,000 quality jobs in Kern County.
That's a lot of jobs.
That's a lot of jobs.
I mean, that's a real number. That's something that you believe is obtainable.
I think it's obtainable. Is it audacious and aspirational? Yes, it is. But the way I look at it is even if we got half of that, that would be a big accomplishment. Or if we get the 100,000 in jobs and it takes us a few more years than that, it's still a good thing. And I think it's good to aim high rather than sort of just have, a low bar of expectations.
That's true. When you've got something that's easily obtainable, you can't brag about it.
Yeah, right. You check that box real quickly.
Right, right. And this is something that grabbed my attention. But if I remember correctly, was it that's kind of a 10-year projection? You're hoping to average 10,000 jobs a year, if possible.
Yeah, that's a 10-year goal, and so there's multiple ways to get there. It's also not necessarily just new jobs. Part of what we're trying to accomplish is change the mix of jobs that we have. So we have a lot of minimum wage jobs in Kern County. And so when we say we want to create 100,000 quality jobs, some of that might be, having more opportunities that are higher paying, and people who are in maybe some of these minimum wage jobs, they're able to transition into those. So it's a combination of new jobs as well as kind of, replacing minimum wage jobs with higher quality jobs.
I think it's a mix as well with the what's inside those industries too. So it's not just take aerospace, for example, because that one hits close to home in Tehachapi. It's not you're going to create 25,000 aerospace jobs and everybody's designing the next space shuttle. You need tradesmen inside the aerospace industry. You need people that might be making less, doing a quote unquote less glamorous job somewhere else, but could actually get paid more inside of one of these right. kind of blooming industries.
Yeah, and so two things there. When I say quality jobs, we've defined that as about $43,000 a year, which is about $22 an hour, and a job where the employer is providing the health care. And if you do those two things, at least the numbers would tell you that if a family's good at managing their budget, they should be able to put aside $6,000 a year. And why is that important? Because they can either save for college for their kids or they can save towards their retirement. And that ultimately leads to creating generational wealth. And there was a healthy debate within B3K about, do we just go for more jobs and all jobs are good and maybe a bunch of them are minimum wage, or do we set the bar a little higher there? And we landed on the latter. So back to your second point of your comment there, Corey, is you mentioned aerospace. And so aerospace is one of the 4 industries that B3K has identified as having the greatest potential to create the type and the number of these quality jobs that we need. And to your point specifically, within aerospace, there is a big multiplier effect for that industry as well as others in terms of it's not just the people who work directly for the defense contractors, it's all the other support businesses and contractors and, second and third tier contractors that have the ability to offer those types of jobs.
Yeah, I'm a big Mike Rowe fan, Dirty Jobs, and he's always been one of the proponents talking about trade, skills. Not everyone's going to be an engineer.
Yeah.
And I think that was a part of your message, and you even talked specifically about that. Not everyone has that drive or the aptitude to say, I'm going to go to university. But we need these skilled jobs that provide a great career and income for families. Welding, electricians, all of these support, whether they're directly involved in the one of these businesses or industries, or they create their own business and future generational wealth, if you will. But I thought that was spot on, because it's so hard to find people right now in contracting. Mm-hmm. It's hard to find people in plumbing, electricians, and welders. They're just so few of them. They're in demand,
right?
And we need to support that growth.
Yeah. So within aerospace, for instance, a few weeks ago, probably right after I came and spoke to the economic development group up here, we gathered the major defense contractors in Palmdale, and this is NASA, Edwards Air Force Base, Stratolaunch, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, et cetera, et cetera. And we got them in the room and say, hey, here's what we're doing with B3K. And quite honestly, we in Kern County want to do a better job of supporting this industry. And so what we're doing with them is we want to convene a meeting of all of our workforce development agencies and partners in the educational community, get them in the room with all these aerospace firms, and really talk about how do we produce the talent that you need for the next 10 or 20 years? What do we need to do differently and better? And I would say, to your point, Key, without exception, every single one of those executives told me, you know what, we don't need help finding engineers. We actually need more help finding mechanics, plumbers, welders, electricians, because all of them have plans to expand their manufacturing capacity out there in East Kern. And so the number of jobs where they really need them is those trade type of positions.
So with the consultant findings, what were some of the, outside of the aerospace, what were some of the other job sectors that were sort of targeted as an area of focus?
Yeah, so the second real big one, of course, is sort of energy and specifically carbon management. And that encompasses a lot of things, everything from renewable, biofuels, biodiesel, to hydrogen projects, to carbon sequestration. And so it's all of those new technologies that are emerging in energy. Now, important and to add to that is that doesn't mean that we in Kern County think we're going to just move away from traditional oil and gas. We're going to continue to fight for and defend that industry, but we also need to make the case to the world that Kern County is one of the most unique places in the world, geologically speaking, for developing these new energy technologies. And technology in the world always evolves, so that's important for people to know. Third industry is business services. And by business services, I want people listening to think of any company that can sell their product or service to someone who's outside of Kern County. And why is that important? That's important because that means money is being brought into Kern County, and then it circulates amongst all the other local businesses, whether it's your retail establishments or even just in the local economy for housing and construction, et cetera, right? So there's a real emphasis in picking these four industries that they are ones that export something, and so that the money comes into Kern County. And then the last one is advanced manufacturing. And we landed on advanced manufacturing because in looking at the current composition of the workforce in Kern County, there's actually a lot of talent. Like he was saying, we've got people who are welders for pipelines in the oil and gas industry, but that same skill could maybe be applied in a new industry, whether it's manufacturing of medical devices or food processing equipment or just a variety of different manufacturing industries that we want to support. So those are the four, and then we identified a fifth area, which is entrepreneurship and innovation, which we just touched on. So
I want to go back to the energy piece real quick, because you talk about that, emerging technologies, but the need to continue our current technologies. So let's speak about even with carbon capture, right? Well, one of the pushes on carbon capture is to take the carbon produced by the oil, the oil industry and turn that into carbon capture and turn that into another energy product. And even the same with wind. There's talk of the hydrogen, being able to generate hydrogen off of wind. So these are actually emerging technologies that are benefiting from sort of the ecosystem of the current technologies.
Yeah, that's correct. And there's some good research out that evaluates the feasibility and the cost and the viability of these different things. That when you talk about carbon management, there's even things that we can do different in terms of farming that can help keep carbon in the ground. And so, that's one end of the spectrum. Actually, it's not too costly. You get a lot of environmental benefit from it. The other end of the spectrum is things like direct air capture, which is hugely expensive, not very well proven. They've tried it a little bit in Europe. And so our focus is going to be on the stuff that's viable and that also does create jobs. And you guys know out here that some of this renewable energy stuff really hasn't created a lot of jobs other than during the construction phase, and they don't pay a lot of property taxes. So, when you look at some of these, carbon sequestration, and you mentioned like capturing carbon that's coming off of an existing cogen plant, for instance, or some other, diesel equipment or something in the oil fields, you just capture that at the source and then re-inject it back to the ground. that really is something that our oil and gas companies already have a lot of expertise doing in terms of putting it back, injecting it back down into the ground. So
yeah, and I know there's a proposal coming up. The county's been talking about it. I've heard a few presentations, just dealing with methane capture with organics, and something that seems to consume more time in my life than I really wish it would when it comes to the state of California. But out in Mojave, doing a big facility where it's a digester. Your organic material comes in, it gets digested, and it basically turns into renewable natural gas, goes back onto the pipeline, and then Southern California Gas or whoever it is ends up using that, and it goes back into into your homes. So it's creating, again, it needs that, but it needs that existing infrastructure. It needs that natural gas infrastructure in order to be viable. You just can't cut off natural gas and then what are you going to do with RNG at that point? There's nowhere to go with it. So that's another one of those ones that really needs our existing infrastructure to be successful.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of pipelines that have to be built in order to move these different energy products around, for sure.
And that's where the pipe fitters and the welders and all that stuff come in.
Yeah.
So where are we in this process? I mean, we have the conversation that's going. Where are we to putting wheels on the ground and starting to move forward, or are we still trying to bring people in to help this and continue to gain momentum?
Well, I would say it's both. So the first year was basically the research phase. That was 2020. Last year was the kind of putting some plans together, and then now we're in what we would call the implementation phase. So we've got some decent plans, and we're continuing to now broaden the groups that are working on each of these plans and bringing more people into this vision for B3K and for Kern County. And so with each one of those different industries, there are groups, primarily private sector led, that are meeting, and they're taking these action plans one by one and starting to work on them. So I mentioned, for aerospace, let's get the employers and the workforce and education partners together in a room. That takes time to organize that, get all the right people there. There's also going to be what we call a placemaking initiative around aerospace, and that ties back to Tehachapi in particular as being a place where a lot of aerospace people choose to live, and then they commute down into the desert. There are some things we need to talk about in terms of how do we continue to create the right quality of life and amenities in Tehachapi or Ridgecrest or Mojave or Rosamond, etc., so that people who want to work in that industry also say, oh, yeah, this is an attractive place to live. So that we're going to be convening a group later this summer to work on that. Energy is very much still building that coalition. We've got some good co-chairs there, the CEO of Berry Petroleum and then the CEO of Kern Refining. So that one's a little bit further behind. But the point being key is that each one of them's got a team that's meeting. Anybody who wants to be a volunteer to engage with this, you can reach out to us through the B3K Prosperity.org website, and I can help connect you to groups that are working on these things.
There's also the initiative too. I mean, there's, I think, a lot of similar initiatives in the past have focused on, we need to recruit people here. But this one's a little different because you're actually focusing on, hey, the best workforce for here is already here. They may be in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, but we need to be able to let them know, first of all, you have a career opportunity in this area. We can partner them with the educational resources in this area. So yeah, some might want to, kind of fly the coop and get out for a while, but others it's already home to them, and you're not having to sell the community because they're already all in. And so there's a lot more elements to this to kind of work on the school age children now. So in the future, there's a future for them.
Yeah, even within energy, there's a pilot curriculum that's been developed in collaboration with Lawrence Livermore Labs that's being piloted in Kern County and then also up in the Delta, up in the Bay Area, or the Sacramento area, I should say. And that's so that kids do start to know about, hey, here's where technology is going. Here's some different career paths that I didn't even know were possible. And it's not, we certainly still want to try to recruit businesses here. That's been the traditional economic development playbook for a long time, but B3K is definitely much more about putting the right conditions and programs in place here to allow these four industries to kind of create more jobs and for those businesses to be more successful.
Where are we with the educational aspect? With them come with different educational institutions or organizations coming on board?
Yeah, I'd say we're in a really good place. I've been meeting regularly with Kern Community College District, which of course is Saracoso and Bakersfield College and Porterville. Kern County Superintendent of Schools is all in on this effort. So then that kind of covers all the districts in the county. Kern High has been doing some good things with career technical education. But, I think being up here in Tehachapi, there's probably some of those programs that need to be extended out this way. And so there's some work to do, but I think the commitment and the buy-in to the vision is very strong.
Yeah, I think we've seen that lately. There's been a lot of talk, with Saracoso, and I think the community's support for them when it was suggested that they may be losing their lease to the Tehachapi Unified School District, like community came out and said, no way, these people they're important, they're here now. And then there's also, they've got long-term expansion plans for our community, and programs are growing. And they started as a night school 4 years ago, and now they're operating, full boat, and they've got a lot of crazy and new programs, and so there's a lot of future expansion for them.
And if you remember just a couple of years ago when they were introducing classes, welding was one of the classes they offered, and there was a waiting list. People were yes, I'm starving for this. I don't have to drive down to Bakersfield to go do it. Saracoso was coordinating a program here. There is those people in our community that express that desire of yes, I'm in.
Yeah, and President Hancock out there, I can assure you, is very much excited about the opportunity to support aerospace, and in doing that, it is actually going to look like a lot of the types of programs you just described.
Mm-hmm. What about you talked about the entrepreneurial piece. There's a few other things going on there as well. Dive into that a little bit, and what the kind of how that sort of small business piece and being your own boss sort of fits into all this.
Yeah, well, entrepreneurship is something that I'm very passionate about. I like to kind of joke that I'm a product of 3 generations of entrepreneurs and a mom who prayed a lot for me. So, and that's actually what led me to get connected with B3K. I chaired the work group on entrepreneurship, and I also started an organization with KEDC called Kite, which stands for Kern Initiative for Talent and Entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship is a pretty powerful thing, because I think every one of us is born with some certain skills and talents that are unique to us. And if you can help someone figure out how to take that skill and that talent and apply it in a way that allows them to earn a living, I mean, I don't think there's anything more cool than that. And so that's why I'm passionate about it. And at the same time, if they're successful and we help them be successful as a community, they're going to hire more people. They're going to grow jobs. And so that's what gets me fired up about entrepreneurship. So Kite is probably going to sort of be the umbrella that will take the B3K entrepreneurship action plan and then carry it forward on a countywide basis. And we've got some exciting things going there. One of the action items in that plan was to get more accelerator and incubator type of programs in Kern County. And we've already had some quick wins there. Bitwise came to Bakersfield a couple of years ago. They're finally opening up that building, I think, on April 4th. They also launched a cohort kind of incubator program where they've got, I think, 10 entrepreneurs going through that, and they'll do 2 cohorts a year. Cal State Bakersfield just announced that they're going to do a Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. They will also run 4 cohorts a year through that accelerator program. Kite is also going to be offering a 10-week little mini accelerator utilizing a curriculum called Co-Starters, which is nationally recognized. And Kite wants to bring that to 10 outlying communities all around Kern County. We're starting up in Kernville next month, as a matter of fact. And then actually we're hoping to bring it here to Tehachapi, and as probably Ridgecrest too as well would be the next 2. And then we'll get to the Shafters, the Wascos, the Delanos, the Tafts, etc., and build that out over the next few years. So good stuff coming for entrepreneurs.
So for those that have got those juices flowing, they're going, but they're a little bit, maybe I'm a little bit not sure, am I ready? Who is the right person? Is it someone that just has the ideas? Or do they need more than that? Where should they be before they want to get involved in that kind of a program?
Are you saying someone who thinks they want to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah. Like, am I ready for it yet? And it's that confidence level is, I got to take that first step. Is this the first step?
Yeah, I would say one of these programs in particular for those in Tehachapi here, when we bring the Co-Starters 10-week program up here, that's not a big commitment. It's $200, which is below the cost of actually offering the class, and you get a lot of great materials and curriculum. And it's 10 weeks. It's in the evenings, so you don't have to quit your job. It's a way to come in there with an idea And that over that 10-week period, you're going to kind of get a glimpse of, well, what would it take? How do I put a plan together? What are some of the things I haven't thought about? How do I do the financial plan? How do I, if there's technology involved, do I need to get a patent or not, or does that really matter? How would I put a pitch deck together, right? And those of us that invest in startups, we call these a pitch deck, and that's just a really condensed version of your business plan, so you can go show it to potential investors, et cetera. So they'll give you some skills on how to put that together. So I think those programs like that are a great place to start.
And that's the foundation. That's the base, because the folks they'll come to me once in a while and, hey, I want to do this. But if you don't have that business plan, I mean, a lot of times I'll connect them with somewhere like the Small Business Development Center. But if you come in looking with all this stuff, or especially when you're approaching an investor, and it looks like you've got your thoughts together, and there's viability in investing in your organization, that's going to help. I mean, it's way worth the $200 investment to be part of this this Co-Starters initiative, just because you're going to get all this information that you need, and it will present yourself better, and then give you that confidence, what you were talking about, Key, to make you really feel like you're ready.
Well, it's like we talked with Bob Souza, okay, and Bob, the original wine guy here from Tehachapi, his tenacity, I'm not going to take no, is not in everybody.
Right.
But there are successful business people that maybe don't have that yet, and then they get that momentum and they get the confidence. And I think this is something that can help give you that confidence and go, this is viable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe in myself.
I think being around other people who are either going through that process at the same time as you, or who have previously hiked that trail, can be inspiring and give you a little bit of that extra confidence, for sure.
And where can people find more information about this, or where do they need to stay tuned to see where it's coming, hopefully, to Tehachapi?
So go online to gokite.org, GOKITE.org, and you can sign up to be on the newsletter, and that way we'll keep you informed of what's going on all around the county on entrepreneurship.
Yeah, and we're working on, like JP pointed out, working on bringing that program to Tehachapi at some point here in the near future. So we started some basic conversations at that level. So hopefully we'll have easy access here in the next year or so.
I would think that if we do get some people that are interested, if they started to let you know, hey, we're in Tehachapi, we're going to be in when it comes, that might help.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah. So if you do have that kind of, just that thought, I think I can do it, or you can do it, this is a great opportunity. You're not going to have to leave our community. It's going to be here. So this is a great opportunity. Only $200, 10 weeks, and you can make your dream a reality, or at least give you that next step in that direction.
Yeah, start exploring it. Don't go out and quit your job tomorrow morning. No, be thoughtful about it. And a lot of the key to good entrepreneurs is that they understand how to leverage resources that they already have. And resources doesn't always just mean money. A lot of times people think, I got to raise $1 million. Like, no, you might have to raise some money, but who do you know that knows something about what you want to do? And could even be indirect, or that's just a good business person or a mentor, right? And so a lot of entrepreneurship is about sharing that idea with as many people as you can, and you'll get a lot of good feedback, and that might help you validate the idea and see some holes or pitfalls in your thinking. And sometimes I see entrepreneurs that are afraid to share their idea because they think, well, someone will steal it and they're going to do it. And, it's like, well, if it only lives in your head, it's never going to happen either. So, and if you're meant to do it, then you're the only person who's meant to do it and make it happen.
Yeah, and I think we're starting to get that culture of sort of, the incubator and that sort of thing in Tehachapi. We've got, just having a place like the Village Collective open up right down the street here from City Hall to have a place where you can sort of have a very affordable place to work and be creative and start, and then, graduate yourself to, you don't need to get a big office lease and all these sorts of things. So to have some of those resources and be around others, because that's a big part too. I mean, any co-working space across the country is actually successful because someone who has the idea just is missing one little piece, but someone else sharing a desk 2 doors down has that missing piece, and those connections and collaborations are made there. So starting to see that sort of happen here in Tehachapi.
As we talk about the entrepreneurs, it brings me back to our B3K discussion in the business to business aspect. So with that, how did that come into play to be one of these 4 areas? Because I see the businesses, you've got something that supports another industry, but I mean, I wouldn't think that would come straight to the forefront of four areas to work. And how did that come to play? Because I think there's a lot of businesses that maybe don't value themselves in that market, and they might think it's more about, I sell to the consumer, not fellow businesses.
Yeah. That's a good insight there. You've tapped into something that I've heard from other business owners in the communities that, oftentimes they're thinking about, well, just selling to their local town or whatever networks they have sort of within that city or even within the county. And so even the mind shift of thinking about, well, gosh, let's say I run a little marketing agency, or I've got some other little software product or something that I'm selling goods on Etsy and I can sell them outside of Kern County. Even just the mind shift of thinking about how can I sell this to people who are outside Kern County, it's a different approach. And I think if we start thinking creatively about how do we support companies like that, and I'll give you an example of one that I'm seeing over and over and over again, is so much of our shopping is moving online, but that means that the companies who want to sell things online, there's a lot of fulfillment work. Mm-hmm. And so there's opportunities, I think, to set up sort of some fulfillment centers, warehouse types of things. Someone can start that business to help other business owners get their goods and services out, because not everybody wants to sell through Amazon for a lot of reasons. And Amazon's great; they built a big thing down in Bakersfield, but they're not for every small business owner. So back to your original question, though, Keith, why did we land on that? The data actually took us there. So Brookings helped us look at over the last, I think, 10 or even 20 years, where are we seeing job growth in Kern County? And they noticed this little blip of companies like the ones I'm describing, whether it's consulting firms or marketing firms, but businesses that can sell a product or service outside the area. And we've seen some growth in that area. And so they said, all right, well, there's a little pocket of strength. Let's see if we can build on that. Yeah,
that's even something I noticed using a lot of our data recently, pulling from some of the the AI platforms we pull our stuff from. It's called other business services is what.
Yeah.
And that in that sector, I same thing. I looked at that too on just my own data that separate from the B3K stuff and went, wow, this is a really growing sector in the last several years here in Tehachapi proper. Folks that have those companies, whether it's consulting or what it might be, because they have a skill set and they have access to resources, like JP pointed out. And those resources aren't just capital; those resources are connections, they're the knowledge, and it is a growing industry for sure. So I'm glad they captured that.
Yeah, and remember, during this research phase, we were all doing Zoom and you guys were getting this podcast started, right? And so this whole idea of remote work really became a reality and more people started thinking that way. So that was another reason why we landed on it. It was a little bit, serendipitous, I suppose. You make lemonade out of lemons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to evolve. And I think that's what we were forced to do 2 years ago. I mean, for us, one of the things here at the city of Tehachapi is we talked about how government communicates with its audience, which is the birth of the podcast, is we needed to evolve and do things differently and reach people the way they liked to receive their information. So this is one of those formats for us. So we're trying to be forward thinking, but there are so many things that we can do. Like you said, this working from home aspect. You can create something, in that environment, and it can be successful and used outside of Tehachapi, outside of Kern County, and bringing that money back in has a huge impact.
That's right. Yeah. And as we do this work, we're going to find that it's going to cause us to change lots of things. And so we've already talked about education, workforce development. We've talked about offering new resources for entrepreneurs. What about, if you are working remote, you need really, really good high-speed internet and broadband. Okay, well, now that means you got to get telecom, you got to get cities and counties and municipalities to look at how can we continue to improve that? How do we get co-working centers located around here? We're going to come up with other policy changes that maybe city and county and municipalities need to make about how do we use land, right? How do we make our regulatory environment even more friendly? I think a lot of times in Kern County, we think we're really easy to do business with, and that may be true relative to Sacramento, but relative to maybe other states, I think we can do better. And so B3K is actually going to force us to reevaluate a lot of things. I think that's just healthy, right? You can't stay stagnant.
So do you have conversations with other corporations that are based elsewhere outside to see, or is it come from your own past experience where you look and say, hey, it's easier to do business in Texas than California?
I have not yet, in my new role here as executive director for B3K, done that, but certainly KEDC does that, and they are part of B3K. And then in my own business experience, absolutely. My family's business does business in all 50 states and Canada and Europe, and so I think I've got some good experience to draw from there.
So you understand the different levels of bureaucracy. I mean, we talk about it all the time just here at the city level. That's, sometimes we get our hands stuck. It's like, oh my gosh, we can't believe how many layers it takes just to get this grant done, or just to bring the money back into the community. Doing business at a global level, and now coming back here to Kern County and say, hey, we can do this, and we can do it much better.
Yeah.
And what's the response been like?
The response has been really great, actually. And I think during the first 2 years, people were kind of a little bit confused. Well, what is this? And
I was one of those guys, I'll be honest. I think I had a
Right.
conversation. I'm like, so what do you, I had the conversation with a consultant. I'm like, so what is it that you're doing again? Like, I'm not sure.
Well, yeah, you hire these fancy consultants from Washington, D.C., and, they're going to come here and tell us how to do this. Like, I can appreciate that response. But now that we've really crystallized the message down to we want to create 100,000 high-quality jobs, that resonates with people. And so it's being very well received. There's a lot of work ahead of us, though. So, I need as many people to help pull the wagon as I can find.
So we're here, we're helping kind of tell this story. And so what's the message you want to get out to East Kern? What's the message you want to get out to other business owners or those potential entrepreneurs that are listening?
I think for business owners, this needs to primarily be private sector led, because the private industry is the one that ultimately creates most of the jobs. And Corey probably knows that the statistics are something like 90% of net new job creation in the United States is from small business. It's not just from the big giant companies, and certainly government creates some jobs too. But so we need the business owners to get involved in this. And I hate to be critical looking backwards, but Brookings pointed out in their research that relative to other economic regions that are good at this work, the private sector in Kern County has historically not been very engaged on this topic. And even my own family's business, that's just not we just kind of keep our heads down and just keep working. And sometimes you need to take a minute to pause and say, all right, well, if I've got a problem with talent, maybe I should go make the time to go talk to our education and workforce development partners, or maybe I really do need to go advocate to get rid of some of the bureaucracy and the regulatory things. But if you don't do that, nothing's ever going to change. So that would be one kind of rallying cry I would say is, if you're in any of these 4 targeted industries, or you just care about the future of our economy and our way of life in Kern County, please reach out and I'll find a way to get you involved. So,
and let's give the web addresses again.
Yeah, so B3K Prosperity.org.
And if you were that entrepreneur that's thinking about the future class,
go kite.org.
And even on the Kite, there's a few other, there's the resource kind of database, and it's really awesome. You can actually check your business or your sort of idea, and it'll partner you up with resources that match who you are, what you're trying to do. It's a very cool tool, and it's useful even right now if you're not at that stage.
And Corey, so let me put you on the spot here. The Greater Tehachapi Economic Development Council, is it important for the local businessmen to be involved?
I think it's important to be there for a variety of reasons. You'll get access to things like B3K, get that sort of ground level. We've got very similar job sort of training initiatives that are being worked with right now. And I say we because I sit on the board. And it partners a lot with, we even after JP's presentation last month, Josh, our president, said, well, we shouldn't duplicate efforts. We're just going to kind of go all in and sort of help this out. And I said, absolutely, although we're going to do a little healthcare stuff as well on our local end. But it really just but I think as the business owner, whether you're a small business owner, medium, whatever it may be, making that connection, because that's what mostly it's all about, is being able to find someone who has that service, that maybe it's that other professional service that you can't look up on the internet. So I think just being part of that sort of ecosystem is the best part of the EDC, and being involved in that for sure.
And when do they meet?
First Wednesday of every month, and it's at 7:30 a.m. at the Slice of Life on Valley Boulevard, and we open the doors at 7 o'clock for networking after as well. And again, those are those important, learn about things and make those connections, and it's really helped the small businesses that have been involved.
And then beyond that, I'll throw out a couple things, because we're going to tease Richard Chapman from the Kern EDC will be in here very soon to sit down and talk about their involvement. And I know they're very closely involved with what you're working on, JP. With what other, should they be involved in Kern EDC as well as the Greater Tehachapi EDC? Or
I think really just it depends on the size of your business. I think I think being with the Tehachapi EDC is very good and probably serves most of your needs. KDC does a lot of these initiatives, these larger initiatives. But I think being involved and whether it's a membership with KEDC or investing locally, I think again it's just another one of those opportunities for access, and it just really depends on whether or not it's your business is large or small.
And I'll throw out the SBDC is involved within both organizations, and they've become a very valuable tool for a lot of local business people.
Yeah, I mean that's funded by the federal government, by the SBA. SBDC through CSUB is who I send folks to all the time, whether it's Kelly Bearden or Jay Thompson. And I'll tell you a story. There was a business recently, a small business that was bought and sold here in Tehachapi, and the new owners were looking for funding. And I said, okay, here's Jay Thompson's card, call Jay. And it was at a time when the banks were very leery on lending. And these people sat down and they said, well, I don't know, really, it's tough right now, and you're a first-time business owner. And then he looked at his sheet and he said, oh, Jay Thompson. All right, well, we're done here then. No problem. We'll get this stuff, because he was already partnered up with that kind of stuff. And so anyway, being with the SBDC certainly helped. And again, that's what that with the Kite and KEDC and B3K, all these things are sort of getting those resources lined up for you to be successful.
And JP, I think that if one or many become successful, that's good for others. We get sometimes locked in, focused on, I've got to be the best at it and screw everyone else. But we're more successful when others are successful around us. Am I wrong in that thinking?
No, I think that's absolutely right. And the saying of rising tide lifts all boats is absolutely true. And don't ever underestimate how many people are watching you in life. And I say that from a lot of different perspectives, but in business, right? Other people are watching you and they're learning from that, and maybe they're getting inspired by it. So, and the more money that we circulate in the economy, especially if we're bringing it in from kind of, things we're selling outside, that brings money in, that just creates a bigger pool of capital, which can then be invested in the next set of startups.
JP, anything in closing that maybe we didn't touch on that you want to get out there?
Back to business services, one specific example of how we're going to get started on that initiative is one way you can support maybe a smaller business that's just getting started is we can do a better job in Kern County of buying and sourcing from those small companies. So, if you go to an Adventist Health or a Dignity Health and say, hey, if we hold a kind of a vendor kind of procurement initiative, fair or something, look at stuff that you're buying something from somewhere outside of Kern County. Why can't you buy it here instead? So that'll create a little bit more of a baseline of customer support or revenue potential for these local companies as they grow, and then they start exporting outside. So that's an example of something that group will be bringing forward. So just wanted to share that as an example. And it also has a policy implication too. I think there's things that our local municipalities can do to maybe revise some of their outdated language on buying local. So that's on the to-do list as well.
Awesome. This is exciting. Like I said, maybe it was the 10,000 or the job number that just, grabbed me.
Yeah.
But these are things, and especially when you had that about the trades. And it's like, I believe in that. And those are things that I think that are right here in Kern County that we can be very successful at. So, JP, thank you for taking the time coming up and sharing all of this with us and those that are listening to Tehachapi. I know that they appreciate it. There's a lot of people that have got those, should I try and start my business or not?
Yeah.
And maybe we'll get that energy moving forward.
Yeah, I think just my closing thought is, why are these quality jobs so important? And it's because we've got a lot of families that are struggling in Kern County. I think it's 45% of our Hispanic families are struggling to make ends meet, and something like 40% of Black families. And so we started with, how do we get those kids that are in those families, give them a better chance at having a brighter future? And so that's what led us to then, we need more quality jobs. Well, what is a quality job, right? It pays this much. It has employer-provided health care, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So big picture, whether you're someone who's listening and thinks, there's not really a way that I can get involved in this. I'm not in one of those industries. I don't want to be an entrepreneur. Well, just be supportive of the effort, because we really are trying to improve livelihoods here for the next generation of our kids.
And you can follow along at B3K Prosperity.org, and that's the number 3. And folks, if you've got any questions for us, or you'd like to reach out to JP, and you can send us an email and we'll get it to him. You can do that as we are constantly looking for new topics and questions and conversations that we can have. Send that email to media@TehachapiCityHall.com. JP, thanks for coming in. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Corey, thank you.
Yeah, no, excited. This was a good one, and excited to get that information out there. And I think a lot of folks in a variety of industries will benefit from this information.
There you go. It's B3K Prosperity, and you can follow along. And we appreciate the time right here on Tehachapi.
Tehachapi is a conversation about Tehachapi designed for the people who live here or who would like to know more about this mountaintop community. If you have a question you would like answered, email media@TehachapiCityHall.com. We will try to answer it on a future episode of Tehachapi.